Good morning, class. Our lesson for today is about the concept of local autonomy, decentralization, devolution, and deconcentration. Now, according to Pimentel, local governments now enjoy a greater measure of self-government compared to their very limited powers in the past. The political umbilical cord that attached them to the central government through a system of patronage and dependence has been cut to some extent so that they can now more or less chart the course of their own development. And also, in a certain case, it was also affirmed that even barangays are meant to possess genuine and meaningful local autonomy so that they may develop fully as self-reliant communities. Local autonomy. Under the 1987 Constitution, the state is mandated to ensure the autonomy of local governments. It is further mandated that the territorial and political subdivision shall enjoy local autonomy. Okay? Local autonomy signifies a more responsive and accountable local government structure instituted through a system of decentralization. The grant of autonomy is intended to break up the monopoly of the national government over the affairs of local government, not to end the relation of partnership and interdependence between the central administration and local government units. Now, in a case in Limbua versus Mangilin case, the Supreme Court ruling under the auspices of the old local government law, um, it, it ruled that autonomy is either decentralization of administration or decentralization of power. Okay, so there is the decentralization of administration when the central government delegates administrative powers to political subdivisions in order to broaden the base of government power and in the process to make local governments more responsive and accountable and ensure their fullest development as self-reliant communities and make them more effective partners in the pursuit of national development and progress. Okay? At the same time, it relieves the central government of the burden of managing local affairs and enables it to concentrate on the national concern. Okay? In this case, the president exercises general supervision over them, but only to ensure that the local affairs are administered according to law. He, however, has no control over their acts in the sense that he cannot substitute their judgment on their own. Okay, so let's take note of that. Now, decentralization of power involves an abdication of political power in favor of the local government units, declared to be autonomous. So in that case, the autonomous government is free to chart its own destiny and shape its future with minimum intervention from local or rather from central authorities. Okay, so according to a constitutional author, decentralization of power amounts to self-immolation, since in that event, the autonomous government becomes accountable not to the central authority but to its constituency. So, lahi og mayon kag decentralization of administration because ang administration regi delegate. Okay? When we talk of decentralization of power, gi-abdicate niya ang political power in favor of the local government. So, mahimo ng autonomous. The local government can decide for itself, can shape their own destiny. Pwede sila magplano sa ilang budget, sa ilang mga programs, sa ilang mga activities. So, kana. Okay, so mo na kalahian sa decentralization of administration and decentralization of power. Okay. Okay. In a later case, however, Pimentel versus Aguirre, okay, the Supreme Court noted that under the Philippine concept of local autonomy, the national government has not completely relinquished all its powers over local governments, including autonomous region. So only administrative powers over local affairs are delegated to political subdivision. So administration ra ang gidelegate class. Okay, so not dili tanan nga powers. The purpose of the delegation is to make governance more directly responsive and effective at the local levels. Local autonomy under the Constitution involves a mere decentralization of administration, not of power. So mao ni ang giingon sa Pimentel versus Aguirre, in which local officials remain accountable to the central government in the manner the law may provide. So autonomy does not contemplate making many states out of local government units. So mao ni atong gina-practice karon. Okay, so bisan pag naay local autonomy ang atong mga local government units, still they remain, or the local officials remain accountable to the central government, no? And of course, they are also accountable to their constituent, but dili lang nga wa sila gihuna-huna nga accountability sa central government. Okay, so na siya. I hope nasabtan natin. Under existing law, local government units, in addition to having administrative autonomy in the exercise of their functions, enjoy fiscal autonomy as well. So, when we talk of fiscal autonomy, it means that local governments have the power to create their own sources of revenue in addition to their equitable share in the national taxes released by the national government, as well as the power to allocate the resources in accordance with their own priorities. Okay, so it extends to the preparation of their budgets, and local officials in turn have to work within the constraints thereof. They are not formulated at the national level and imposed on local governments, whether they are relevant to local needs and resources or not. Okay, so naay fiscal autonomy ang mga local government units. They can plan for their mga revenue resources or revenue sources. Okay. However, while local autonomy refers to decentralization of administrative powers, the creation of autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao and the Cordilleras, which is peculiar to the 1987 Constitution, contemplates the grant of political autonomy and not just administrative autonomy to these regions. Okay, so thus the provision in the Constitution for an autonomous regional government with a basic structure consisting of an executive department and a legislative assembly and special courts with personal, family, and property law jurisdiction in its of the autonomous region. So naay courts, separate courts ang autonomous region class. So mao na gitawag og Sharia courts. Okay? So Sharia courts are under the administrative supervision of the Supreme Court of the Philippines, of course. Okay, so Sharia court deals with Muslim customary marriage and financial laws. Kay lahi man ang atong family laws, no, o custom laws sa Muslims o non-Muslims. To become lawyers, to become a lawyer under the Sharia court system of the Philippines, kinahanglan makapasar po siya sa Sharia bar exam. So aside from passing the Philippine bar exam, she or he has to take the Sharia bar exam para makapractice siya sa Sharia courts. Okay. Decentralization. Okay, so what is decentralization? Now, there is no one single definition of decentralization, but the World Bank, for instance, uses the term decentralization to describe a broad range of public sector reorganizations. Okay, so decentralization is the transfer of authority and responsibility for public functions from the central government to intermediate and local governments or quasi-independent government organizations and or the public sector. Now, the Local Government Code of 1991 declares as the policy of the state that the territorial and political subdivisions of the state shall enjoy genuine and meaningful local autonomy to enable them to attain their fullest development as self-reliant communities and make them more effective partners in the attainment of national goals. So, toward this end, the state is mandated to provide for a more responsive and accountable local government structure instituted through a system of decentralization, whereby local government units shall be given more powers, authority, responsibility, and resources. Okay. The process of decentralization shall proceed from the national government to the local government. Okay, so there are basically three types of decentralization within the public sector. Okay, so first we have political decentralization. So when we talk of political decentralization, this is the transfer of political power and decision-making authority to subnational levels, such as elected village councils, district councils, and state level bodies. Okay. Second is we have the fiscal decentralization. When we talk of fiscal decentralization class, this involves a level of recourse reallocation to local government, which would allow it to function properly and fund allocated service delivery responsibility with arrangements for resource allocation usually negotiated between local and central authorities. Okay, so the fiscal decentralization would normally also address such issues as assignment of local taxes and revenue sharing through local taxation and user and market fees. Okay, so as you can see, kaning sa revenue sharing no, sa local taxes kay lahi man gud ang local taxes and the national taxes. Okay, so na sila percentage. Okay. Next is administrative decentralization. This involves the transfer of decision-making authority, resources, and responsibilities for the delivery of selected public services from the central government to other lower levels of government, agencies, and field offices of central government line agencies. Now, the centerpiece of LGC class or the local government code is the system of decentralization as expressly mandated by the Constitution. Indispensable to decentralization is what we call devolution. Okay, and the local government code expressly provides that any provision on a power of a local government unit shall be liberally interpreted in its favor. And in case of doubt, any question thereon shall be resolved in favor of devolution of powers and of the and of the lower local government unit. So, any fair and reasonable doubt as to the existence of the power shall be interpreted in favor of the local government unit concerned. So, you have to take note of that class. Okay. Now, when we talk of devolution, so na-mention na nato earlier, devolution. Okay. When we talk of devolution, this refers to the act by which the national government confers power and authority upon the various local government units to perform specific functions and responsibilities. Okay, so it shall include the transfer of local government units of the records, equipment, and other assets and personnels of national agencies and offices corresponding to the devolved powers, functions, and responsibilities. Simply put, class, devolution in plain and simple term is transference of rights, powers, property, or responsibility to another. So meaning the surrender of powers to local government or to local authorities by a central government. Okay? So local government units shall endeavor to be self-reliant and shall continue exercising the powers and discharging the duties and functions currently vested upon them. So they shall also discharge the functions and responsibilities of national agencies and offices they devolved to them pursuant to the local government code. Now, if you read the LGC class or the Local Government Code of 1991, there are devolved powers mentioned there. Okay, so pwede dili man tanang powers ki-devolve sa central government to the local government. So there are specific devolved powers which were previously exercised by the national government, and it is or it these are enumerated in section 17 of the LGC and distributed to the different local government levels. So nana na mention din ha. This provision is the core devolution of central government powers to the local government unit. So the section 17 of the LGC class mentioned the basic services and facilities. Okay, so mo na ang naadiha sa section 17. However, the public works and infrastructure projects and other facilities. So again ha, si section 17 nag-mention siya sa basic services and facilities. However, public works and infrastructure projects and other facilities, programs, and services that are funded by the national government under the annual General Appropriations Act, other special laws and pertinent executive orders, and those projects that are wholly or partially funded by the foreign sources are not covered by Section 17, okay, on devolution. So unless the local government unit concerned is duly designated as the implementing agency for such projects, facilities, programs, and services. So, uh, devolution, however, does not prohibit, kaya diba, when we talk of devolution, again, this is the transference of power and authority gikan sa central government to the lower government. However, it does not prohibit the national government or the next higher level of local government from providing or augmenting the basic services and facilities assigned to a local or to a lower level of local government unit when such services or facilities are not available, or if made available, are inadequate to meet the requirements of its inhabitants. So, kung dili kaya sa local government unit class, dili na gusto ingnon nga pasagdan ra pod siya sa next level niya nga government unit or even the national government nga pasagdan lang siya pag-implement sa services and facilities. Okay? So you take note of that. Now, let's talk about deconcentration. So ngayon mo, sana mo po yung deconcentration, ma'am. So we have decentralization, we have devolution, and then we have deconcentration. Okay. So when we talk of deconcentration class, this refers to the transfer of authority and power to the appropriate regional offices or field offices of national agencies or offices whose major functions are not devolved to local government units. So ayaw mo ka-confuse ani class sa devolution o sa deconcentration. Okay, so the national government manggod class is mandated to effect the concentration within six months after the effectivity of the local government code. That provision is found on section 528 of the LGC of 1991. Now, again, as mentioned ganina, do not be confused with devolution and deconcentration. So kung mayroong kag devolution, this is the transference of rights and other powers or authority by the national government to the local government. So for example, ang national government president kana siya sa executive nga branch, no, ug mayong kag sa local government units unsa man na sila. So kanang atong barangay, so that's the pinaka ubos nga level, barangay, and then we have municipal, and then we have the province. So kana sila. Kung maghisgot tag deconcentration, katunang mga powers or mga functions nga wala gidevolve sa local government units. For example, DILG, no? DILG nga naa sila yung mga powers sa DILG nga sa national na sila'y gi-transfer pod nga authority probably dito sa region office. So unsa may region diri sa ato, like ang region 8, DILG region 8 or DILG province or DILG ang sa city. So by level man na class. Okay? So og deconcentration again sa mga appropriate offices na siya, regional offices or field offices of national agencies nga tanang nga kana nga mga powers or functions wala nila gi confer ngadto sa mga local government units. So sila ana ang mga regional offices or field offices ang gihatagan or gitransferan sa power, not the local government units. Okay, so I hope na nakuha na ninyo. Okay. Now, in some class, local autonomy refers to the degree of self-determination exercised by local government units vis-a-vis the central government. Okay, and to achieve that local autonomy, a system of decentralization is a prerequisite. So, dili mahitabo, walay local autonomy nga mahitabo kung walay system of decentralization. Okay? And to that effect, to effect the system of decentralization, a process of devolution is applied. So again, sa itong devolution, this is the transfer or ang power, functions, and authority get transfer from the national government down to the local government. Okay. Now, When the process involves the transfer of functions from national office to regional and local offices and not to local governments, o dili sa mga local governments, involving administrative functions, again, administrative functions, it is properly called deconcentration. So administrative functions class ang sa deconcentration. Okay. Now, local, okay, balik nga, proceed na ta. Okay, proceed ta sa local governance. So, nahuman na ta sa decentralization, local autonomy, and decentralization. Let's talk about local governance. So, mapod ng local governance. Okay. So, what is local governance? Local governance comprises a set of institutions, mechanisms, and processes through which citizens and their groups can articulate their interests and needs, mediate their differences, and exercise their rights and obligations at the local level. Okay, so the building blocks of good local governance are many. So we have citizen participation, partnerships among key actors at the local level. Of course, the capacity of local actors across all sectors, multiple flows of information, institutions of accountability, and a pro-poor orientation. So this is mentioned in the UNDP 2004. Now, local governance class emphasizes the need to look beyond the narrow perspective of legal frameworks and local government entities. Okay, so it seeks to include the municipality of multiplicity. Okay, it seeks to include the multiplicity of formal and informal relationships between different actors in development, like the local government, the private sector, mga associations, mga deconcentrated agencies, or mga CSOs. Okay, so maghisgotag CSOs sa atong next module. CSOs is civil society organizations that shape and influence the output and effectiveness of political and administrative system at a sub-national level. Okay, so there is a large degree of synergy and coherence between supporting national governance processes and local governance, as many of the aspects are in fact the same and is therefore necessary to work with governance principles at local levels to, of course, strengthen local governance processes. Okay, so take note of that. What is the difference between decentralization and local governance? Okay, so the main difference between decentralization and local governance are in the actual actors participating in the process and the mode of interaction between governments and private sector and civil society. Kung maghisgot ang decentralization, this pertains to public sector, institutional, and organizational reforms and processes and the support thereof. Whereas, when we talk of local governance, it pertains more to supporting the creation of an enabling environment where multi-stakeholder processes, and that includes the public and the private sector, as well as the civil society, that interact to foster effective local development processes. Okay, so take note of the difference between decentralization and local governance. Okay, so I'd like to share to you the quote by Abraham Lincoln. Okay, so no man is good enough to govern another man without the other's consent. Okay, so pareha ra na class nga walay mo sakit nimo kung dili na nimo tagaan o consent ang usa nga sakiton ka. Okay. I hope you have learned something from this module class, and um, you able to grasp the concept, the concept of local autonomy, decentralization, devolution, and deconcentration. So I will upload this in the Moodle so you can answer our these questions. You will be given enough time to answer this. Okay, thank you, class, for listening.